The webinar is being recorded. Forwarding, do you want to give an introduction and then I'll start?
Yeah, awesome. Want to make sure I'm not on mute. Hi, everyone. My name is Jelmar Vargas. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for Jaspersoft. And on behalf of the entire team, we're excited that you could join us here today for the What's New in 8.2 webinar. Just as a reminder, if there are other folks from your company that weren't able to join us just due to time zone or their schedules, please encourage them to still register for this event. That way they'll get the recording of this live conversation next week when that communication goes out. Our speakers today will include Abhishek, who just kicked it off to me, Giulio, Anna, and Teodor from the Jaspersoft team, and I'll be here as a guide for the Q&A portion. To ensure the timeliness of the webinar, just please make sure that you're on mute, save any questions for the end of the presentation, and when you're submitting a question, be sure to use the chat box feature. We will be first going through the questions that were submitted via email to our team for the Q&A, and then we'll start going through whatever else comes in the chat. Again, as you know, this is our latest mainstream release, and we're going to be talking about some new and exciting features for Jaspersoft, and we'll encourage you to follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. That way you can stay appraised of the latest events or any other webinars or launches that we have moving forward with Jaspersoft. I'll put the links to those channels in the chat. And first up speaking, we have Abhishek.
All right, thanks, Jelmar. Welcome, everyone. So let me share my screen. Let me know if you see my screen. Okay, good. So welcome everyone to Jaspersoft. What's new in the Jaspersoft 8.2, 3.2. The 8.2 is for Jasper Reports Server. 3.2 is the version for Jasper Reports IO. Right. My name is Abhishek Nishis. I lead the product and engineering for Jaspersoft. Before I start, primarily we'll talk about what has gone in 8.2 release and also in the 8.04 release. But we'll also spend a brief time in talking about some of the new things which are coming. And that's why this whole disclaimer slide, that some things that we'll talk about, it's a planned thing and it may or may not make up in the future releases. Now, this is the agenda. So I'll talk about the release updates because that's critical for all of you to understand what are the versions we have released and how you should go into those versions. Then we'll spend time in what's new. We'll talk about Jasper Report Server, Web Studio, Library and Desktop Studio, and we'll also talk about some cloud and Docker update. I'll just give you a very quick preview of what's coming next. We have some more webinars upcoming, like the roadmap webinar, where we'll go in details of those specific topics. That will be followed by demos by, Giulio will give the demo on Web Studio. Anna will cover the UI UX, and Teodor will cover the report splitting. All right, so let me get into it. So first, release updates. So what are the main releases that we pushed out in the last few weeks? So there were two, as you know, that we have two branches, right? The long-term stable release and the mainstream release. So for the long-term stable release, we updated 8.04. Now, why did we update the long-term stable release? Is mainly one of the biggest changes for our long-term stable release was to remove all the Simba drivers. So we used to package Simba drivers, and now we don't do it anymore. There were primarily 4 or 5 drivers that we used to ship, and those are not required. We took customer feedback, not many are using it, and also all those drivers are available for free from the vendor itself. You'll find all the detailed information, and I'll put the link in the chat later, but all the information is here. We have a dedicated community article highlighting how do you adapt to this removal of drivers in case you're using it. Right? And you'll also find what's new in these 8.04 outside of Simba drivers, right? In our what's new page on our website, jaspersoft.com. Primarily, we'll be talking about the mainstream release. So we'll look at 8.2.0. Now, one important one is that we also release 8.12. Typically with our mainstream, once 8.2.0 comes out, we stop the support for 8.1. But as we know that many customers onboarded the 8.1 pretty late, and that's why we have extended the support for 8.12. So you can talk to your account managers to figure out that, if you don't want to upgrade to 8.2, you can stay on 8.12, right? This is to make sure the customers don't have to upgrade immediately. who have recently upgraded to 8.1. We also released 7.14. This is just for customers who are upgrading from 6.x to 8.x. This is not for production use. This is just upgrade path, right? You cannot jump from 6 to 8. So yeah, you need a 7, and that's why we produced a 7.1.4. Same goes for Jaspersoft Studio, IO, and Docker updates, right? And one more important note. So there was a webinar by our support team, which talks about what releases are available. So all the previous versions have been removed because, illegally we cannot ship Simba rivals anymore. Moving on. This is our release calendar. So, I'm only talking about the LTS and MS releases. So our first release was back into December 2021. We're right now here in the second MS release. And, I'll talk about some of the upcoming releases, but our next major release would be 9.0. 8.3 is a planned mainstream, may or may not happen. We might directly jump to 9.0. What's new? So let's talk about Jasper Port Server first. So one of the main things that we worked on was the security improvement. So there was this main task that anyone can upload a jar file. So we had to make some server settings to upload the jar files. And the main thing is the admin can control that who can upload the jar files. Then there was a login logout feature. This is just to control the number of failed logins. So you can, as an admin, you can configure that how many failed attempts can be there. And after the certain number of failed attempts, you can log the user down and then, reset the password once you figure out that everything is fine. One of the core things for the 8.2 release was accessibility compliance. We know we were looking at WCAG 2.0 level AA. We were working with the external auditor, and we were able to conclude. So you can find the new and updated VPAT on docs.tipco.com, where you will get the VPAT. Platform updates. The first thing that we did, one of the major things is we certified Java 17 with Tomcat 9.x. We did not have time to certify with all other web servers. So we started with Tomcat 9.x. In the future releases, we'll look at all the other web servers as well. We also have the support for Windows 11 and 2022. We certified RHL 8.x. 9.x also works. That is something that we have, and we've gone back and kind of certified 9.x. In addition to that, we had multiple library upgrades, Ring, Hibernate, HighCharts, and we kind of bundled a lot of enhancement requests, and you'll get all the details in our release notes. So when you go to the specific product, you can find all the details in the release notes. UI and UX enhancements, I'll not talk much about it because Anna is going to demo all of them, and you'll get a preview of that. Report splitting using scheduler. Again, this is one of the features that we're working on, and Teodor is going to cover this in the demo later. Talking about Web Studio, this is, as you know, that we started with Web Studio last year, and that was our first release. And this has definitely gained a lot of traction, and customers are really asking for it. So, and as we committed, we continue to work on it, continue to make sure that we port more and more features from desktop to Web Studio, right? And you will find that in the Web Studio 2.0 standalone, you'll get many more features which are very closer to Desktop Studio. And Giulio will go into details of each and every, all these features and talk about, and these are some of the links. And again, I'll put that in the chat, where you'll find specific things of what was there in Web Studio 1.0, what's there in 2.0, and how do they compare to desktop? Because that's a very common question that I get, that what are the features in Web Studio that are similar to desktop, and what are the things which are not there in Web Studio which we can find in desktop? So we have created an article, and that article will highlight. It will also give you the compatibility matrix. So all these links are there, so that whatever information that you need with respect to Web Studio, you can find it. Again, and Giulio will go into demo later on this topic. Library and Desktop Studio. So report splitting is because it comes from the core library. Teodor is going to talk about. It's just mainly a quick and easier alternative to report bursting, which we released in the 8.0 release. We also did the Excel export compliance, the WCAG level AA. Then we had some Excel and CSP improvements. This was one of the big, we worked with one of the big customers. Then we also added the support for encryption MS Office export. So when you're exporting to Word and Excel, this is where you can encrypt. So that support was also added. One of the main library upgrades was the high charts 10. We moved from 6.11 to 10.x, right? And it allows us to fix all the CV. Now, I know that many of you have asked me this question, that what happens to 8.0x? So in the 8.0x, we didn't upgrade the library iCharts to 10, but what we did is we fixed the CV as a hotfix. So you're still secured, but it's not with 10.0. Google Maps market clustering. This is one of the features that we work with on the request of a couple of customers. Now, if we get the time today, Teodor might be able to demo it. Otherwise, we'll give you a quick preview of it. We'll also have a detailed video on it later on our YouTube channel. Other part that we did is we replaced iText with OpenPDF. This again based on a lot of customer requests, and we thought that OpenPDF is much larger. There's a much bigger contribution to OpenPDF. It does not impact any of the features, right? The features stay the same, so no impact on anything. It's mainly to do that OpenPDF has much more contribution, and in terms of CVs, this is something that we can resolve at a faster rate. Cloud and Docker updates. So we have the support for AWS ECS. You have an article here. We updated our Docker version. This is our Docker page where you can go and find all the Docker updates that we do. We also put the JDK 17 support, right? We updated our marketplace on offerings on AWS and Azure. You can find all this information on our Docker page here. What's next? In the next few months, we'll be talking about some of the major things that we are working on. This being the mainstream release. The next, we'll probably go to the long-term stable release. So I'll spend a couple of minutes and then we'll jump into the demos. So one is we are working on a SaaS offering right now. Our goal is to start with the public SaaS offering, and that is what we plan to do in the next couple of months, right? If you are interested in the early access, we will put a Google form on the community page soon. And anyone who's interested in the early access, you can fill the form and we'll make sure that we'll give you the early access. The managed SaaS offerings and the AWS SaaS contract offerings that is to follow, and that we plan to either deliver it directly or by our partners. Then we'll also, I spoke about the next LTS release. That is where we are working on some of the major features like data alerts, drill down, OAuth. OAuth means basically making it available out of the box. It's not that it wasn't there. You had to customize, right? You don't have to, it will be available out of the box. We'll talk about report hyperlinks, open telemetry, Java 17, and there are many more. One of the main things that we are working right now is we used to do that in the past, but recently we haven't done, is we're kind of revising our customer advisory board. And we are going to set up very dedicated user sessions, sessions on deployment, sessions on UI and embedding, sessions on reporting. So if any of you are interested, your teams are interested in these sessions, I will put the link here. You can register here, and when we set these sessions, you can actually you'll be invited, and you can benefit from listening to the experts of the in-house experts on deployment, embedding, UX, and reporting. We are contributing a lot. So as a goal of this year also, we are focusing a lot on the community. So one of the main things that we will be doing is we will be driving a lot of enablement. That means contributing a lot in terms of knowledge and output articles, including blogs. We are also looking to update our new community platform just to increase on more enhanced user experience and engagement. And we spoke about public SaaS, and again there will be a webinar in the future. We'll go into details about each and everything. So I think Jalimar already spoke about our LinkedIn page and Twitter handles. You should follow these pages to get regular updates from Jaspersoft team. And you can also go to our Jaspersoft events page, to register for the upcoming events. With that, I'll stop here, and I'll pass it over to Giulio for the Web Studio demo.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ami. I will share my screen then. Okay, you should be able to see it now. Okay, well, I'm very excited to present all these new features that have been introduced in Jasper Reports Web Studio 2.0. Now, where we are here is the homepage where we access our repository. The repository, as you may know, could be on Google Drive, could be on GitHub, could be a Jasper report server repository, but I have configured for this demo a local repository based on a folder on my machine. And so this is what we will connect to right now. So the sample folder here, well, it's just a folder. The first new improvements that we made are related to the repository management, where we can actually upload new files, create folders, or upload folder. This will allow to quickly upload a set of resources to your repository. But the real most important new things in this menu is the new data adapter menu item that brings us to the data adapter editor. So as you may know, Jasper Reports Web Studio is primarily a collection of tools for reporting authoring. And this data adapter is where you configure the data adapter that will be eventually be used to get the data for your report. So we have pretty much all the most important data adapters here, like JDBC connection to connect to a database. We can select several drivers. Of course, most of the drivers needs to be uploaded to Jasper Reports Web Studio. We will see how, for instance. We have empty data adapter useful for testing, also random data. We have several file-based data adapters, CSV, Excel, JSON, and XML, where you can either select a file directly from the repository, or by start typing HTTP or HTTPS, it will enable all the options to get the data out of an external resource. Now, it's not just an URL, it could be that if you need more sophisticated query, you can have authentication, you can have a post, you can even post the entire body of your request, very useful for REST API that requires a JSON payload, and set headers and URL parameters, and essentially all that is usually needed to get the data out of a service online. Again, this is available for all the file-based type of data adapter. Jasper Report Server used to execute domain query languages kind of queries against a specific instance of Jasper Report Server. JNDI, similar to JDBC connection, query executor, Mondrian, Mongo. In general, all the data adapters are supported. We provide UI for that ones that are the most common one, but other data adapters, custom data adapters, sophisticated data adapters for, I don't know, reading Java Bean or do something more sophisticated can still be used. Of course, needs to be uploaded as a JRDAX file, which is the extension used in Jaspersoft for the data adapters. All right, so let me exit this data adapter editor and start diving more into what are the new things introduced in this 2.0. And what we will do, we will open the first Jasper report. This is the main interface of the editor, and we added to the palette all the supported elements provided by Jasper Reports, either in the community version, so which are the basic of Jasper Reports, and everything that covers the pro offering, starting from the HTML5 charts, Fusion chart, and Fusion maps. In particular, for that one, we can actually open a report showing up on high charts here. When I click on my elements, I see in my properties view all the information about my charts. Now, while in the Jaspersoft Studio desktop, now we have to introduce this desktop word to differentiate between the web and desktop version. Usually we add an extra dialog opening to configure the chart. In this case, we put all the properties inside our properties view here. It's much more convenient. And here is where we can configure pretty much all the settings of the chart and the data to control the chart. Of course, as we said, we support also the Fusion charts, the Fusion widgets, Fusion maps, and so on. Still continuing on this properties view, let's go back to the first Jasper, so we can actually dig into what are the new things introduced for the properties view. Well, I can click on an element, and here I see all the appearance information and the text field information. And pretty much all the informations are presented in this UI. I can, clicking on these filters, quickly show all the properties and show also the deprecated information for my text field or for the appearance. As you may see, I have technically hundreds of options that the Jasper reports offered in excess to the basic ones that are usually presented in UI. And well, by showing this, showing all properties, I can see all of them. I can actually filter them if to quickly find what I need to modify. For each single property, I can either use a static, let's say, value, or specify the value by means of an expression. This is very, very useful. Also, what has been improved a lot is the presentation of what is supposed to be the default value for a particular property. So you see here we have the color that is used for this text field, which is black, but it's grayed out. This is grayed out because we did not set a specific value for this property. Instead, Jasper Reports Web Studio is calculating what will become the default value, since I did not specify any value for this property. But of course, I can specify property like red here, and in this case, it becomes black, saying, okay, this is not something that is inherited by a style or by a default value. Instead, is the value that I have set. The same applies, for instance, to properties like the rotation. This gray means that this is the value that is going to be applied, but it's not set by in a specific way for this field. If I do that, like if I click this one, it becomes blue, right? Or I will set what could be the default. But if I click it again, it will revert to what will be the default value. Also, in this particular case, you see I'm for this text field, I'm using a style. This is serif bold. This is another things that have been introduced in Jasper Reports and Web Studio, the ability to edit the styles. So I can go to the style, go to the serif bold, and modify this in some way. For instance, I don't know, I can put this like 15, and it will modify all the fields referencing this time. Okay, well, this is an overview of what has been added to the properties. As you have seen, there are properties organized in several groups for simplifying the access, in this case, in particular for the style, the text, images, and line-specific styles. Let's go to another report and let's see some other new functionalities that have been added. And this new area of functionalities are for the editing of the queries and the selection of the data. So for that, I created a simple empty report, very simple. and I want to go to the dataset section of my report. So here is where I will see all my data sets. In this case, I have just a main data set. The first thing when I work with the data set is specify which data adapter I'm going to use for my report. And this data adapter in particular is pointing to SQL database. With this button here, I can enable the my query editor. The query editor for SQL in particular is carry on a specific tool to get the metadata out of a report, which is for now just a reference. I can use my query here. I can type the query. There is a syntax highlighting that helps me to essentially edit my query in a proper way. Now, here I have a set of fields. Now, I will remove all these fields because I want to show you the tool that allows us to get the field out of a query. So in this case, I have product, I read the fields, and from the query, just like we should expect, Jasper Reports Web Studio is able to get all my fields. I can repeat this operation several times. Sometimes there are fields that I don't want to be replaced by this read fields operation. In that case, I can click on my field, and in the field generation here, let me pick this one, for instance. In the field generation here, I have this pin field element here that allows me to exclude these from being removed during regeneration of my fields if I read fields. Another great features that have been added here, very useful when creating a report, is the preview. So based on the fields I've selected on the query, I can actually run the query and see what data will be used for my report. And this is very useful, especially for SQL data sources. But in general, here in this new tool, for any type of data set, I can still manage my fields, my parameters, my variables, grouping, sort fields, and other resources that are specific of the data set. Still talking about the palette, let's open up a different report, which is the one that is using the barcodes. Now here I have barcodes. As you may have noticed, differently from Studio Web, I no longer have two types of barcode library. Instead, I can see exactly what barcodes are available, and if a barcode, a specific barcode, is provided by two different implementation from the Jasper Reports point of view, like as the case for this type of barcode. At this point, I can decide if use barcode for J or barbecue. But the idea is that I will just pick what I need from the palette, and I will drag this in my report. Much easier. Let's see a different type of report that involves the use of resources, and this is the fonts resource. These are a jar XML that shows the use of fonts, and in particular, these fonts here, I will make it bigger. It's not a regular font. This is actually a font provided by an external font type. And this external font type in Jasper Reports is provided through a font extension. So we are able inside Jasper Reports Web Studio to use now font extension. Let me see what is a font extension. A font extension is essentially a jar. So in order to use this jar, like if it will be a JDBC data source, a JDBC driver, for instance, which is a jar, the font extension is actually a jar and lives inside this lib directory. It's lobster2jar. This is a special jar containing my font extension, which is made of the font itself and a descriptor. And by means of this JRInf, this is a special folder that is used by Jasper reports IO when the report is executed. Inside this folder, I have this context XML. For this file, we provided a special tool that allows the user to easily configure this XML. Now, this XML, as I said, allows to specify what special characteristics or settings may be used when a report inside this folder is executed. And in this particular case, we made a disposal of the HTML version, a resource called lobster2/something, and the jar that contains my font. Now, when I, at this point, run this report going in preview, it will actually properly load my font, and this is thanks to this extension. All right, let's move forward and start talking about the outline view. I will use for that the first Jasper, which is a good example of a complex report. Now you can see here, I can see all my elements specified here. I also have the ability inside the outline view to create and remove bands. So if I need an extra detail, for instance, I can click on the plus, and Jasper Reports Web Studio will create for me extra details bands to be used in my report, or I can just remove them. And the same applies to special bands like the last page footer or the background and so on. Also from here, clearly I can select my my elements. Let's move now in the area of preview, and let's see what the preview now offers. I will click on preview to preview this report. This report is made on 9 pages, and I can move clearly between the pages. I can search for something like order, and once I hit return, it will highlight me the first instance of order, and I can go next and find all the other instances. In terms of search, I may also specify some options like case sensitive or use the whole words only. Inside my my report, if I have parameters that are supposed to be for input, they will show up here. So let's modify this report to actually show a parameter here. I will move to design mode. Inside my data set, I go to parameters. I see there is actually a parameter already set. It's called max order ID, but this parameter is not set for prompting. So let's configure this to be for prompting, which means that Jasper reports will ask me for a value, to specify a value for this parameter. Please also note that this parameter already has a default value, which we can see this in a different way in the preview area. So let's move to preview now. Also note that I don't have to save my report when previewing. This report is still not saved in on my file system. I will have to save it properly. Attention, because this is not the case when using Jasper Reports Web Studio inside Jasper Reports Server. where in order to be able to preview a report, I need to save it, or at least it will be automatically saved on preview. Otherwise, the report unit will be not complete to be run. So this is the max order ID. If I reset this parameter, I can actually see what is the default value used by Jasper reports. Now we see we have 9 pages. If I use a lower value, an example 2,350, and I run this report again, the pages went from 9 to 7 pages of orders. So this is how I can use parameters in the preview. Now let's see another set of parameters that we may want to use. And for this, we are going to use a report that uses internationalization. Now, internationalization means that I provide a bundle of strings for each of my languages. And if I click on a properties file, I see that Jasper Reports Web Studio is able to actually open up a specific report, a specific editor for that file. Now, let's open the ATN jar.xml. Let's preview it with the default values. And we see that this is English. Now, it's Italy because I did not specify any country, so it's taking up my default country, but essentially what I see is in English. By clicking this special button here, I can show up what we consider the built-in parameters of a report, something that is always there by default in Jasper reports. One of these fields is the locale. So if I select as locale French from France, and I run this report will be executed in French by loading the properties file, the bundled file that we were defining earlier. Okay, I think we had an overview of pretty much all the most important things. And the last things that I would like to show is the support for books. So books, as you may know, are report made of a set of parts, and each part is implemented in a form of a jar.xml. So in this case, I have a query data set that it goes over a set of countries, actually ship countries in particular. And for each ship country, I will run this particular report, while in the header of my book, I will have a table of contents and an overview. So if we preview this report, we see our table of contents, but also we have a bookmarks element here that allow me to go to very specific section of my report. Now, the section in this case are 2 levels. The first level are the real part, so table of contents, overview, which is the second part. Please note how in this case the paper is rotated, and then it starts all the specific information for the country. But I also have a third level, which is the particular city of the report I'm looking at. Okay, the configuration of these tabs and these bookmarks are based on jar.xml attribute in the jar.xml. Okay, and that's, I think, covers pretty much all the news that have been added to this version of Jasper Report Web Studio. And well, I'll pass the word to you, Abhi.
All right, thank you, Giulio, and over to you, Anna.
Thanks, Giulio. Thanks, Abhishek. So I'm going to be walking you through the UI improvements that we've made for Jasper Report Server 8.2. I'll share my screen, and pardon me for not looking at the camera. I'm going to be using my big monitor over here. So Okay, so we'll start on the home page here of Jasper Report Server 8.2. I'll be walking you through 4 improvements. The first is a new page in server settings. So if I go to server settings, we have a new page called General. Right now there's only 1 item on it. We will be adding more in the future. This is allow jar file uploads. As it says here, when enabled, only the system administrator can upload and modify jar files for JDBC drivers, and when it's disabled, nobody can upload jar files through the UI. And I'll show you how this works. So I will keep it in its default state. And if I go to create data source, type JDBC. For JDBC driver here, there used to be an upload driver button, and you can still get that through that property in the server settings. It's just a change in default behavior. So right now it is not showing. Let's go back to server settings, turn allow jar file uploads on. I'll go back to data source. And now we have our select driver button. So again, change in default behavior, but still possible to have the select driver button. The second improvement is also in server settings, and it is for ad hoc settings. So in the general section, this first item is new, show duplicate table rows. And when enabled, the show duplicate rows formatting option will show in the ad hoc editor. So what this does is control if you can, it controls whether you can see that option or not. It is on by default, which it was before, but we just didn't have the option to control the default behavior. So I'll show you how this works. So I'll leave it on here. Go to create ad hoc view, demo for ad hoc. And if I select table as visualization type, I see the show duplicate rows formatting option. Now, if I don't want to show that as an option in an ad hoc view, I would have to go back to server settings, turn it off. Let's create the same ad hoc view again. Table visualization type. Oops, it is there. What is happening? Well, let's go back and look at it again. Ad hoc settings. Well, I'm sorry, I can't explain that one. Maybe there's a bug in my local instance, but oh, I apologize. It's for whether it is turned on by default or not. I'm so sorry. So it does show, it just controls whether it is on or off by default. So the third improvement is also an ad hoc designer, and it's for showing tooltips in calculated fields and measures. So if I create a calculated field or a calculated measure, I'll create a calculated measure. We show a tooltip for these so you can have better information on the fields and measures that you're going to be using in your calculated field or measure. So it shows the name, what the type is. So this is a string field, what the original name is in the data source, and the default summary function, which for this is count. And I will not create that. So the last thing I'm going to show you is an improvement in navigation. And this is present in ad hoc views, reports, dashboards, and domains. And since we're in an ad hoc view, I can show you right here. We now give you an easier way to close these particular objects, and in this case, an ad hoc view. Before, if you wanted to exit the visualization that you were working on, you would just have to select home or library to go back to wherever you wanted to go to. So now I can just easily exit by clicking on the Close Ad Hoc View button. And I have not saved my changes. So it's going to ask me if I want to save my changes or not. I don't, so I'll close without saving. And in reports, we also have back navigation, and that is helpful for if you have drill down. I'll show you how that works. Oops. Okay, so I have a report and it has drill down. I'll click on a city here. Go to the drill report. So I've drilled down one level, and now you see I have a back button. And that just takes me back to the previous level of the drill. And from here, I can then exit the report if that's my desired action, close report, and back to the home page. And what this does is the close button will take you back to where you started. So if you open something from the repository, it's going to take you back to the repository. If you open something from the home page, you know, say I had a favorite or it's in my recent items, then it's going to take me back to my home page. So that covers the UI improvements for 8.2. In review, it was 2 new server settings. There's the jar file upload and setting the default behavior for show duplicate table rows. Sorry for the slip up on that one. It's just whether it was on or off. Ad hoc designer, we have the tooltips for calculated fields and measures to make it easier to see what exactly you're dealing with, what the source of that is. And then the close and back buttons for ad hoc views, for reports, dashboards, and for domains. So that covers the UI improvements for version 8.2. And now I can hand it over to Teodor.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. So here comes the third demo of today's webinar. I'm going to share my screen. And what you should be seeing by now is the login page of my instance of Jasper Report server. So I'm logging in as a Jasper admin. And I'm going to show you one simple report that I would like to split. First of all, let's run the report as it sits initially in my repository. It's a very simple report. It displays a list of customers, order and group by country and city. And yeah, it's just a simple listing. We see it's a document with 42 pages. And for example, at page number 8, we see customers from Mexico start appear. And at some point, I think on page 15 or something, we end up with page 13 maybe, we end up with customers from the United States. So just a simple list of customers grouped and ordered by country and city. So if I were to, export or view this report in PDF format, of course, I end up with a single PDF made of 42 pages. And this is what we start with. Now, let's just say if I were to schedule this report in PDF format using the scheduler, this complete list of customers from all countries would end up being generating in a single execution and be delivered to the same person or to a group of folks that will all see the entire list. So the requirement we try to solve in this demonstration is a way to split the document by country and send the different pieces to different people. So this is what we refer to as report splitting. Now, of course, in a previous release of our product, we have dealt with this feature, and it was achievable with using what we were calling at the time report bursting. Well, report bursting are like the big guns, you know. It's so flexible and it's complex because it covers a lot of use cases. So it's in certain cases it might prove too complicated for simpler goals like the one I'm having today, to just split a PDF into pieces. Report bursting is more complicated because, for example, it involves the use of a specially designed report that we call the trigger or the burster. So in many simple cases, we just have the report already. It's just a big piece and we want to split it, cut it into smaller pieces and send the pieces to different folks. So this is why we came up with a simpler approach to this feature, and we call it report splitting, as opposed to what we had before, and we still have, of course, report bursting. I will prepare my report for being split, being cut. So the first thing I will have to do, I'll open it with Jaspersoft Studio and perform certain modifications to it. Well, we already seen that there was, you know, let me close it and reopen it from the repository. So I'm connecting with Jaspersoft Studio Desktop to my instance of GRS, and the report is here, double-clicking on the report template, and it opens in Designer. Very simple report. Of course, it uses a table component, but that's not essential to the way it works. It's just a way to put things together using a table. But what's important here is that we do have groups, right? So we group our records by country and by city. So now if my plan is to split this document in multiple sections, each section being listing customers from that particular country, then one of the things I would want to do is for, you know, each country group to start on a new page, because I don't want to split, you know, a document and, you know, Mexico is somewhere on the middle of a page. So a good thing to do, not mandatory, but recommended, and most likely everybody will do so, will configure the group to start on a new page. So, you know, every country on a new page. Also, because, you know, the overall document had 42 pages, I don't want my page footer to say, you know, this is the last page is page 8 out of 42. You might wonder, well, where are the other pages? So what we want to do is to say, well, you know, reset the page number for each country. And also in the page footer, the total of pages, it would be evaluated at group level. So evaluation time is no longer report, is country group. So what I'm doing here is that I'm guaranteeing each group starts on a new page, and the page number is isolated to that particular country. So if Canada has only 8 pages, I'll be seeing only 8 pages in my page footer. So that's you know, some of the little adaptations needed to make the cutting consistent, let's say. I'm saving the report and publishing it just to show you what's the immediate effect of these changes. So when I run the report again, we have 43 pages. Why? Because it says page 1 of 8. There are only 8 pages of customers from Canada. And if I go to page 9, let's say, Mexico starts on a new page, and it's you know, page 1 of 5. So only 5 pages of customer listing for Mexico. Everything else is about the United States up to page 43. Okay, so I rearrange a bit the groups to make the cut more consistent. Now, just want to mention that report splitting is based on a feature that already existed in our reporting engine, is the ability to create reports that are made of parts. And even Giulio, before my presentation, showed you a report that had tabs at the top. those were parts in a multi-part document. So with splitting, we're leveraging this feature, this ability of reports of being constructed of multiple parts. So what we're saying is that, we're just make this report be put together from different parts, and then it's these parts that we're going to split. So the splitting occurs at part level. Now, to put together a part-based report would require us to, use report templates that are parts and, glued together with the master report and all that stuff. But we didn't go that route. We just enhanced the engine to simply create artificial parts in what's basically a monolithic report. So this is just a single report template. By initial design, it doesn't have any parts, but we will create parts artificially. We will create parts because we're going to create a different PDF for each part. That's at the core of the splitting functionality. So I'm going to take one more step and introduce parts into this report, and that would be the last step before I split it into multiple PDFs. So in order to introduce parts in this monolithic report, I'm going back to my designer, and I want to say that where each group starts, I want a part to begin. It's at that point that I want to do the split. In our case, it's obvious that we want to split each part at the country group header point. So this blue text field is the text field displaying my country name, the country name group. So in this text element, with the new version of Studio, I have an option on right click, which says configure the report splitting. So I'm going straight to this dialog. And what I find is an expression asking me to give a name for the part I want to start here in this place where the header is rendered. Now, of course, when I introduce parts, each part would have to have an identifier. So parts are identified by their name. So what this property asks me is, what name should I be giving to the part that starts here? And obviously, I should give the country name to each part that represents that country. So just because this is an expression, I will just use the expression editor and pick the country field from my data source. So this billing address country, this is the country field. So I'll be using the value of the country field to give a name to my part. Now, of course, that would be enough to just introduce parts in this partless report. But if I want to see them, I could make them visible as tabs, just as we've seen them before in Giulio's demo. And yeah, that would be, what's basically essential to this. Let's see if these have taken effect. If I publish the report, saving it, and it's going to be published. Okay, successfully. Going back to the report viewer and running it again. All right, so here we have parts. I just made that visible just to see them with our eyes. So we have a part for Canada. If I click on Mexico, it jumps to page 9, and if I click on USA, it jumps to page 14. So it acts like bookmarks here. Of course, there could be any number of parts. Now, if I were to export this to PDF, it will still be a single PDF with 43 pages. So now let's split it. When we talk about splitting, it's definitely about the scheduler, because, from the report viewer in an interactive mode, I will always get a single PDF, a single Excel, a single document every time. I mean, there's no way to hit the menu here and get 10 PDFs. There's no such thing. I always get a single PDF from here. So when we talk about splitting, it's about the scheduler, because these PDFs I probably need to store in different location, or I need to send to different people by email. So it's definitely about the scheduler. It's a feature of the scheduler. So let's make sure I now enable the actual splitting, because so far I just prepared it for splitting, but I didn't ask for it to be split. And that's done with the last push, you know, in the designer. There's this flag enable split. So I could very well have parts, but they would still be glued together. Now, okay, I have the parts, but I want them to be a different PDF. I want the splitting to actually be performed. So now I'm saving this, and I will go back to the Jasper report server, and this time I will schedule my report. I will run it in the background, so it's run with the scheduler immediately. Right-click on the report, run in background. And I'm not setting much here because it's already about PDF, let's say. It's about storing the PDF files that get generated in the same folder where the report is. I'm just pushing submit for now. And we'll wait for a few moments for the job to kick in. So just doing some refresh to see where when it gets done. So it takes a few moments to be picked up by the scheduler from the queue. It can take up to a minute. Okay, so we've seen Canada appearing, and then Mexico and USA. So normally, if I would have scheduled the monolithic report, I would have end up with a single PDF with all countries inside. But you see, because of the splitting feature that I just walked you through, we end up with a different PDF for each country. And yeah, that's splitting, right? If I open the PDF for Canada, there's only 8 pages with the Canada customers. And of course, Mexico only 5 pages. Right. And of course, the other customers from USA. And okay, so that's basic splitting. But you know, the default options of the scheduler were about storing these PDFs in the repository. What about sending them by email to different people? So because maybe I'm the sales representative for Mexico, I'll get the Mexico PDF, Giulio will get the Canada one, and Abby probably the USA one. So how do we achieve that? Going back to the designer, and you'll see there was a property that I deliberately ignored initially. It's this custom property here saying custom property, meaning you know, they have a free name. It's just that there's a naming convention. Everything that starts with this prefix net sf Jasper reports print part and having an arbitrary suffix is metadata I'm free to attach to my report. So in this particular case, I want to inject some metadata into my report that will be leveraged by the scheduler. So I'll just say, you know, the email to send this current part to is an expression. It's a Teodor Danciu plus country name @cloud.com. I mean, the emails could come from the database, but in our sample database, we don't have the emails from Giulio and me or Abby. So I'm just doing a demo trick here. I'm just creating what could look like dynamically generated email address just to show you that they can be different and would end up with each PDF sent to somebody else, right? So yeah, that's one thing. I could inject any other metadata or information that I would like to leverage in my schedule. For example, maybe I want each PDF to be stored in a different folder name. So I could with a custom property like that, I could specify the folder name. But let's stick to the email for now and save it. And how would I be leveraging this email address in the scheduler? Well, this is based on an addition or an improvement of the schedule in this 8.2 release that we made. And nowadays, well, let me just delete these. nowadays, some of the fields in the scheduler UI don't need to be hard-coded values. They can be expressions. So in the case of the email, well, I'll just leave the folder, the same folder. But when it comes to notifications, I'll just say, send this not to, sales@cloud.com, which would have been usually the case with static email addresses. What I can say is that send this report to this dynamic email address coming from this metadata property called netJSF, just to remember the name you gave to it, Jasper reports part email. Okay, so all these text fields here accept this syntax $brackets that would point to a custom property injected as metadata when the report was executed. Okay, in this case, we have just the email dynamic, and the subject would be sales report. But you could have $something here, net, I don't know, the name of the recipient or whatever, everything is dynamic. What's not dynamic in the scheduler UI is everything that has to do with checkboxes or radio groups. There's no way you could type $something in a radio group. That's why that option is still hard-coded or static, cannot come from an expression, right? But it's intuitive. So everywhere you can type something and write something, you can write $brackets and your property. Otherwise, if it's a radio group, like in this case, I want to, the files to be attached to the email, this you cannot, make dynamic. It has to be fixed, whatever you pick at submit time. All right. Well, I think this server machine doesn't have the email server SMTP email server configured properly, so I wouldn't be looking at my email box because, although the email address was dynamic, they all come to me. Those are just aliases for my own inbox. But I would not look into the inbox right now because probably the email server is not properly configured on the demo machine. But I think you got the point. So yeah, just to look again at the the scheduler UI, everything that has to do with properties that you can type into, like folder destination, address of the FTP server, directory, even username and password, everything that you can type into some text, you can put a $brackets property, and it can be dynamic and be the way you configure your splitting. You can send your output pieces to different folks or store in different places in a dynamic way. All right, so that's the way we achieve report splitting. This is we say it's the easier way of splitting reports, especially when reports already exist and they just need to be cut into pieces, and no additional work would be required. As you can see, although we produce multiple PDF, the actual report is run only once, as opposed to previously mentioned bursting, where it's actually about executing the report multiple times with different parameters. So the approach is totally different. All right, this ends my report splitting demo. So Abby, how do you want to go about it? Should I show a bit markers?
Yeah, let's show a bit of marker clustering and then we'll take the questions. All right.
So another improvement we've made after working with one of our customers, what happens with maps? We have this map component based on the Google Maps API. When you have many markers in a certain area, they tend to be so close to each other that you have to zoom a lot until you start to differentiate individual markers on that map. And we wanted to leverage, after customer suggestion, we want to leverage this feature of the Google Maps, which is called marker clustering, meaning if there are too many markers in a small area, we just group them together in such a called cluster, and we just tell how many are there. If we want to see them individually, we click on the cluster and they spread out. And we see there are, 14 markers in this, 2 blocks area inside San Francisco. They're so close to each other that looking from a high-level zoom, it was impossible to distinguish them. So it's better to group them in a cluster. So this is a feature that we leveraged. Now, I will show you the way it's configured, but it's not the only improvement we've made. I mean, certain markers can be just copies of themselves. They could effectively be one on top of the other. And you wouldn't know that, for example, here there are 10 markers in the same place. That's another feature called spidering. So when multiple markers are in the exact same place, when you click on them, they spread out on a radius like that, which is called spidering. I'll show you spidering as well. Just to point out that we had to also add a legend to our maps to control series of markers. I mean, in my example here, you see blue markers, yellow markers. They come from different queries in the database. They have different meanings, like some can be Starbucks, other can be office depot locations, whatever. So with the legend, we offer the possibility to hide and display different series of markers, something that we implemented ourselves. This is not a feature of the Google API or Google Map itself. And of course, after you play with this map for a while, you want to go back to where you were when you started. So you want to reset the map to its initial state. So we added this reset button. All right, so it goes back to the initial state. All right, let me see if one of these reports are showing spidering. I don't know which one is it, so I don't want to end up going through all of them, but anyway.
Yeah, Teodor, we have multiple questions. I think in a couple of minutes, we should start taking the questions.
Okay, so let's just show to you where the marker clustering is configured. So in my marker report, I think it was this one, when I open the GRXML, we have a map component designer. I click on it, and in the properties, there's the map and the markers section, and there are two new checkboxes to enable clustering and spidering, but these can be also enabled on a per series level. So these are, applicable to all the series in the map, but if you have multiple series of markers, these two flags can be tweaked on a per series basis. Anyway, let's say a usability improvement of maps in general. And now that we get to the QA question section, I hand back to you, Abby.
So I think, Teodor, there are a few questions on report splitting. Let's address that, and then we'll go to Jelimar on some of the questions that we received from the email. I think the first question is from Dr. Yana, says, what happens if you reprint the group header on each page?
Yes, good question. So frankly, I would have to check that. That's a very good question. Because off the top of my head, I would agree with what you suspect, that when this group header repeats, the metadata associated with it would still be present there. And it would, for example, if Canada spreads on, we've seen it spread on 8 pages, and if we reprint the group header on each page, we might end up with 8 pieces of Canada. So it could be that, but I would have to check, and we'll get back to you on that one.
All right.
I mean, we could do a test right now if you like, but I don't know.
And
want to
we'll
do that?
get back to you, Johannes.
Okay, all right.
And the second question from Tom is, you spoke about the email addresses, right? Can they be comma separated? Like, can I put multiple email addresses?
Yes. When we configured the email address here, we were having an expression that is supposed to return a string value. And it's true that our scheduler accepted a list of emails separated with comma. So even when provided dynamically using an expression, this expression could still return a list of emails separated with comma. Yeah.
All right. And the last question on report splitting is, can we split the report by number of rows? So when we reach a certain number of rows, can we split it by that as compared to using a group header like country?
The way we splitting is about finding the right spot where you want to have your split. But as you've seen in at least in the demo today, we rely on group breaks to define where we want the splitting to occur. And even when we want to split by number of records, still a grouping by number of records would be the solution to go. For example, we can create an artificial group, we call it a dummy group, that splits every 28 records. I mean, we even have some samples, some samples break every 5 records. So we could create a group expression that changes every 28 records, like suggested. And if we tell that group to start on a new page, well, that's our split spot. Yes, so we could split by number of records because we can group by number of records, and that's essential to splitting technique.
All right, thank you, Teodor. So, all right, Jalima, I'll hand it over to you to look at the questions that you received by email.
Yeah. Our first question was, where can we download Jasper Reports Web Studio 2.0?
So that's available on our e-delivery, right? Same place where you can download all the artifacts.
The next question we received was, where do we get complete documentation on Jasper Reports Web Studio, and how is it different from version 1.0 and the desktop version?
So in my presentation, I shared some links where we have dedicated pages, wiki articles, which talks about what was there in 1.0, what's there in 2.0, and how does it compare to Desktop Studio. So you can compare the features across all these different 1.0, 2.0, and also with desktop.
Okay. The next question is, how is Jasper Reports Web Studio 2.0 licensed, and is it included with Jasper Report Server or Jasper Reports IO?
So it's a separate product. So you should work with your account manager to add that to your entitlement. But yeah, it's a separate license. It's a separate product that needs to be added.
Okay, I think these next few are for Teodor. How is report splitting different from report bursting? Where can we get more information? I know you talked about this a little bit, but maybe the latter half as to where they can get more information.
Report bursting is a feature that we released in a previous version of our product. It's already documented there, and just to reiterate on this, report bursting is more powerful, covers more use cases. Basically, with report bursting, we can achieve very, very complicated scenarios, like maybe even send a different report template to different people. But it's probably intimidating because for simple cases where we just want to split a PDF, it requires too much work, and that's why we came up with report splitting in an easier approach, as we've seen today. But yeah, because it's an already documented feature, I think our user guide explains what we need to know about bursting. I just to confirm while we were speaking that indeed repeating the group header generates extra parts that would eventually end up in extra PDFs. So if that's considered a problem, it could be considered a problem in certain, we can add just an additional configuration to suppress this behavior. So I take that as an improvement for the future.
Thanks, Teodor.
Thank you. The next question is, which version of JRWS supports report splitting?
Yeah, I can take this one. From the 2.0, you have the possibility to set up the properties for specific elements. And one of these properties is the one that relates to the report splitting.
Next question is, why did you move from iText to OpenPDF?
I can take this one. So iText 2.17 was a very old version of iText. Maybe some of you are aware because of licensing issues and stuff. So we decided to give up maintaining our own fork of iText because just by the fact that people see an old version being used, CV scanners and tools like that were always susceptible about CVs being present there in such an old product. So open PDF is the the community successor of iText. It has a community around it. It's an active community. Bugs are fixed. Improvements are made on a regular basis. And when it comes to CVs, it's not just us trying to fix it. There's a community around. So it's just like a different PDF generating product that has a life of its own, and it's up to date and has regular releases. So all the advantages that go with up-to-date product. That's why mainly.
Okay. The next question is the Excel improvement available only in Pro or also in the community version?
It's also available in community version. It's the Excel improvement relies on what we call a fast report filler that avoids time-consuming or CPU-consuming font metrics calculations. So it's just a configuration that it's available also for community edition products. And it's basically a technique to make Excel output faster when especially only Excel is targeted, because this fast approach to report filling is only appropriate for Excel because we do a shortcut basically. But to answer the question, yes, it's as a feature is also available in community edition.
Okay. Thank you. The next question is, where can we find the updated VPAT? What is the certification level you targeted?
So it's on our website. So you can go to docs.tipper.com or you can even get it on edelivery.tipper.com. And it's WCAG level AA, 2.0 level AA. That's the level that we certified.
Okay. Where can we get the Simba driver alternatives, and are the data sources still supported?
All the data sources are still supported, so we haven't taken the support out of it. And as I said, all the 4 or 5 drivers that we used to ship, they're all provided by their vendors for free. We have all these things in the article. I'll just paste that article link quickly in the chat, but you'll find all the details in the article.
Okay. The next question is, what libraries have been updated?
So it's there in the platform support doc, and then we have also listed that in the slide earlier, listing all the libraries. Plus, when you go to the release notes, it will list everything, that all the new libraries that have come with this release.
Okay. Just a few more. The next question is, are you going to remove all earlier versions? If yes, how can we request earlier versions if we still have a valid subscription?
Yes, so if you have a valid subscription, you can request, you can reach out to our support team, they will provide it to you, right? We have removed it all from the earlier versions because of the legality, right? But yes, as I said, if you have a valid subscription, you are entitled to get it. You just have to request the support to get that version.
Okay. And are you going to release 8.1.2?
We already did. So that's what I highlighted.
Cool. And the last question, which I'm sure anyone can contribute to, is who should we reach out to in case we have more questions?
So we have a alias, which is js-product-team. That is something that you should use. We can put that in the chat. And you can reach out to us. That's for the product team. And if you have any questions, reach out to us and we'll make sure that we'll respond back to you. And Anjali, we will take one last
the chat.
from Tim. Yeah. So Teodor, do you want to take it?
I see that there. Is there a limit to the number of split groups? If we want to use this feature in splitting statements, invoices to customers, would I run into an issue if I had a large group, a large customer base?
No, there shouldn't be an issue with the report size. I mean, when we deal with large reports, virtualizer gets involved. So splitting just rides on features that have been there for a long time in our product. So it doesn't introduce performance new performance bottlenecks or something like that. So the size of reports and then or the number of splits is not an issue.
Okay, and I think that's it. I don't see any more questions unless one just came in. 50 to 100K PDFs are okay, question mark, follow up from the same question.
Yes, yes. Large reports tend to use memory when during the filling process, but there we have the so-called report virtualizer, which just free up memory by storing portions of the report on disk. When it comes to large PDFs, that's not a problem because PDF is streamed out directly, so it just doesn't consume memory itself. As we produce it, it's streamed out. So it never poses memory problems, PDF as an output format. So should no problem with big PDFs.
And
Yeah,
we was doing it prior to this one also. We have made this feature available, but this was also done as a customization earlier. So we had customers doing it prior to this.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's all the questions that we have. Does anyone else on our panel have anything to add to close this out?
No, I think we just want to thank everyone for joining the webinar. And as I said, if you have any questions on any of the features that you've seen or any of the release announcements, feel free to reach out to us. Right, we'll be happy to answer all the questions. I think, Jelima, there was a question that whether this recording will be posted. So I'll let you answer that question.
Yes, I did see your response to that in the Q&A chat. This webinar will have been recorded. It will go out in about a week's time, and it will be sent to you all who have registered here directly by email, and it will go out to our YouTube channel as well, and will be updated on the website event page. So you'll get it in a multitude of forms, but most importantly, directly into your inbox. And that's it.
Okay.
Morning.
thank you.
Thank you.